Hi guys, I'm Richard Beck with Beck Tools, and in this video I'm going to show you how to build your BA shredder. Alright, we're going to get started by taking your bridge here, and you're going to put that there. Now, these two parts are the same, and they should be lined up the same. Now, if you try to put it in incorrectly, don't worry, that's not possible, because these tabs are two different sizes, so you can't put it in wrong. It will only go in one way. So you put that like that, grab yourself a magnetic square, put that on this centerpiece, and that will keep this straight up and down. These pieces, you'll push them straight up against so there's no gap, and then you'll tack these two top corners. For welding, this is 1/4-inch plate. I'm using the Everlast MIG welder. You can use stick, TIG, whatever you like. And I know there's a ton of different preferences for the actual, voltage and amperage, so I'm not going to delve into that. Everybody's got their own opinions. Just make sure it's hot enough. If your welder, if you feel like it's not hot enough, you can use a simple propane torch, and you can preheat this metal to 250 degrees, and you will be amazed at how much better penetration you get. So that's a way to cheat. If you have a small welder that's not very powerful, just preheat the area with a propane torch and it'll weld like a 220 volt welder. And alternate to the opposite corner. Alternate the opposite corner. Put about 2 inches on the bottoms on each one of these, and then I will put a couple 2-inch passes with a 2-inch gap, and then some another 2 inches at the bottom. How much you weld this is up to you, but I do not recommend just tacking it. That's not acceptable. The whole point of the BA shredder is to have a really, really rigid machine, and if you're just going to put a couple tacks on it, it's not going to be rigid. That defeats the purpose. So then I go to the opposite side, and this will pull up just a little bit. If you don't want it to, you can clamp it down, but honestly, if you allow these corners to warp up just a little bit, when you bolt it down, you'll have spring tension holding this to whatever you bolt it to, which is going to reduce vibration. So I actually let it pull up. It's only going to rise maybe 30 seconds. It's not going to rise a ton, but I actually don't bolt these down on purpose, because I like them to warp up just a little bit, so that way it's like a leaf spring when you bolt it down. And then it's really solid in the center and resists vibration. Okay. Now, one thing to think about when you're using this side will be hidden by the actual body of the grinder. So if your welds aren't beautiful and you want to hide them, put them on this side. If you want to show them off, put them on this side, because people will see them. This is completely done. The only thing left is to weld the nuts on the inside. So inside your kit, there are some shoulder bolts. Now these are the 1/2-inch ones. I suggest these, that way you don't have to stack as many washers. There'll be some 1/2-inch washers in the kit. There'll be some some shims that are used for something else, but you can use these to put on the shoulder bolt. Now, you should have a little bit of the shoulder exposed. So that way, when you put this in, the shoulder actually goes into this plate and lines it up. So it is now concentric. But the shoulder should not go all the way through, because you want to use this bolt to pull this hex nut tight up against this plate, okay? Now, you don't have to weld these. I like to weld them. That way, you could just bolt it on, but over time they can vibrate loose. So you just need a tack to keep the nut from rotating. Don't weld it so much that you like ruin the nut. Just put a tack. One's probably good enough. This is just an anti-rotation tack and the retentions. That way when you take this off, it's still there. Also, always weld in a well-ventilated area. These are coated, and it is not good for you to breathe the fumes created by welding, especially if you're welding coated hardware. So, if you're gonna TIG weld this, you may need to source some stainless bolts, or you can soak them in vinegar and remove the coating. If you're MIG welding, stick welding, it really doesn't matter. We're just gonna put 2 tacks on there and we'll be done with it. So 1 tack on the bottom, tack on the top, and quickly get this thing out before it soaks up too much heat, and then you can use it right away without a lot of effort. If you leave it in there, then the bolt soaks up a ton of heat and you're not going to want to touch it, and then you're going to have to use the other bolt. So if you take it out really quick, it will help. All right, so the bottom part is completed. Like I said, if you take this bolt out right away, it won't soak up too much heat. So this is done. Now we're gonna move to welding the top part of the frame. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna weld the nuts into these 2 hexes here. So this is your motor plate. Now, this is 3/8 thick, so you're gonna need more amps on the welder, or you're gonna need to preheat this with a propane torch. So here's a good option. If you don't have one of these, I'll put a link in the description where you can get one. So now the key is make sure BA shredder is correctly visible on the outside. I have had a couple guys weld this backwards. That is possible. So these countersunk screws are going to be facing out, and the word will appear out. If you need to preheat it, and as you heat it up, you'll see the water kind of sweat away. So that's about all it takes. Just wick the water away. If you have a big welder, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do that. A 220 volt welder should be plenty powerful enough. You don't need to preheat, but it's not a terrible idea. There are advantages. Also, some guys soak their kits in vinegar or to remove the mill scale. You can do that. You don't have to do that. It's personal preference that some people like to do. The paint will adhere better, and if you're TIG welding, it will be easier to do so. So you just line up the tabs, and if you've gotten any little weld berries, you might need to give it a little bit of a tap. Now keep in mind, these tabs aren't the full length, so the tabs won't come all the way through. That is specifically designed so when you fill that with weld, that you can grind it smooth if you choose. So don't be alarmed if you're looking at it and you say, hey, it's not all the way through. Just look at the gap, and that's probably That's intended that they don't come all the way through. That way you can get good weld penetration and still grind it smooth. Because otherwise, if you grind it smooth and you grind the weld off, well, it's not very strong. So, once you have it like that, you are pretty much good to go. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna tack, 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 tack. We're gonna go as far as we can and opposite. Then we're gonna flip this over and do the same thing on the other side. Especially on the motor plate. Like I said, any weld spatter can be knocked off of the file later if you get some where you don't want it. Okay, so I've got those 4 spots tacked. I'm gonna squeeze holding it together and I'm gonna flip it over. And now we're gonna tack this side. Okay, at this point, you have a fully self-contained frame. The tabs and the slots will hold this thing together and you can weld it. Just keep in mind, continue to alternate so you don't get a whole bunch of heat in one spot, and that's gonna give you your best results. So just think of these little slots as troughs, just fill them up with weld. Okay, this next part is going to require a little bit of prep work. So, these are 2 brackets that are going to allow the top part of the frame and the bottom part of the frame to pivot. You can't put them in the wrong way because the tabs aren't the same size nor are they the same distance apart. So, those go in like this. Alright, so now that you've verified that both those sit flush, we're going to attach these to the bottom portion of the frame and then we'll put that on the top. So, I'm going to slide this over to the side for now. And we're going to attach these to this. This is how it's going to be when the grinder faces you. So this one is going to go in the back and this one is going to go in the front. So we want to make sure that this one specifically is parallel to this, and we're going to achieve that by actually bolting it on. So you're going to take your 3/4 long shoulder bolt, and you're going to take a flat washer, you're going to put it through, and then you're going to take this 1/2-inch rubber washer, and you're just going to thread that on. Now, you'll have a little bit of gap here, which is fine, but this down here, you're going to take this carriage bolt, and then you're going to put the carriage bolt through the square hole from the back side, through the 3/4 rubber washer, through this slot, and then you're going to take a 3/8 washer and the handle. The washer is really, it doesn't matter. This is just for holding it in position. So now you tighten this and that, and this, to change its angle, you pull out and rotate. So now this is held in position. And you can adjust it as needed. And then the other side, same process, your 3/4 long washer, put it through, 1/2-inch rubber washer. Now you're not going to pour a ton of heat into this since the rubber washer is in there. Now those rubber washers will handle quite a bit of heat. So now you have this like so. Actually, we're going to rotate this so it's vertical, so it's like that, parallel to the top. And then we're gonna bring this guy into the picture. We're gonna flip this. Onto the frame. Now, this should be facing the front of the grinder. And you get those tabs in, and you wiggle it around, you get these tabs in, and now you're gonna do what you did for everything else. You're gonna tack on both sides of this. Now when you tack here, it might wanna lift this up, so you might need to give it a tap down. This one here, the same, we're gonna, tack both ends, and then we're gonna put about a 1-inch weld here, and about a 1-inch weld here. And that won't melt your washer. Before you weld anything fully, you're just gonna tack it. So now that it's tacked, go ahead and stand it up. Double check everything. Loosen. So this is what it should look like before you fully weld it. So if this is the outcome you have achieved, then you are good to fully weld. So at this point, lay it down, tighten your handle back up. You can cover this with tape if you don't want to get any spatter on it, but I'm just going to do a 1-inch and a 1-inch, and I'll go to the other side and do that as well. If you don't have a pulse welder, you're an interested one, there'll be a link in the description to this Everlast. It's a really great option. For a lot of guys, this is overkill, but it'll be the last welder you ever need to buy. So the key is, make sure this cutout is facing you and the slot is on the left side. And then you place this like so. Put a magnet on that. Now this wants to warp up, so you can clamp this down and keep it clamped until it is cold. You can even put some shims under it, or just go easy on the welds. This does not have to be fully welded. If you put a real big bead there and there, that should hold that in place. All right, so put a really big bury on both of those. And if this does warp up on you, it's as simple as taking that, putting it underneath, clamping down, and then clamping down. And basically, you can put something under it and clamp this down, and you can flatten that back out. And then this guy here, this part goes even with the end, like that. And a good way to visualize this is the round ball hangs down, the ball's hanging down. Point the arm at you, and it goes on the left side. So once you have that, hold it, set it like this, and then push it out until the edge of that is like so. And then give it a tack. And then another one. And now you can weld it as much or as little as you want. So there you go. Locate your tension arm and the handle. Point the tension arm at yourself. Put the handle so that this is facing up in that direction. The grinder will function fine if it's not 90 degrees, but let's be honest, we want it to be 90 degrees because that looks the best. And you weld right in here. So that magnet will hold it. I'm gonna tack it, and then I will weld it fully. And now I will just weld downhill. So I just went back and forth with a weave pattern and filled that up like so. And that concludes the welding on your BA shredder. So the hardware combination for this joint on both sides is the hex nut that's welded onto the inside, and then your 1/2 inch washer, and then your shim, 1/8 inch shim, goes onto the 3/4 inch long shoulder bolt. So now with a piece of wire, hanger, whatever, or you could glue this with super glue into position. We could bend a little hook. You can get that started. This helps you get it started. And then when it crashes into the rubber washer, wiggle that into position. And tighten this down. Now this should be completely bottomed out. And because of the precision stack up, it won't over crush. So it's completely bottomed out, but still rotates freely with just a little bit of friction. So that's the advantage of that rubber washer in there. If during the welding process you get a large bead of weld inside, you can take a 5/16 drill bit, which is the minor diameter, and very gently run it in there, and that'll knock that weld bead out, and then you can chase it with a tap. Worst case scenario. If you put a bolt in here before you weld it, that will keep the threads clean, and then you can just back the bolt out and throw the bolt away. Next, you're going to take your tooling arm and you're going to insert it, and then you're going to take your male threaded handle, get it started, hold on to this part with your fingers, pull out, twist, and then you can pull out on the handle and then just run that in with your fingers until it gets kind of tight. And then the other one is right here. You'll do the same for this. You can also put an Allen wrench in here if that makes it easier, or you can pull out, do half turns until you get it all the way in, however you choose. The bottom is your work rest and then your tooling arm. You're going to take your pre-machined D plate and the spacer provided and the 3/8 carriage bolts, and you're going to put that through the D plate, put the spacer on, and slide it through the hole like that. And then this one will go through this half moon shape. You'll go through the spacer like so. Take your 3/8 washers, handle, other handle, there you go, just like that. The D plate is installed. Next thing you're going to do is remove the wheel from the packaging. If you purchase the BECK'S Armory wheels, these are high quality anodized aluminum wheels. The anodized provides corrosion resistance as well as wear resistance, since anodized is a very hard finish. So you're going to take this, remove that spacer, insert the 1.5" long shoulder bolt, taper side is out, take your spacer, and then thread that. Get it started by hand first, then find your Allen wrench. Mine is always lost. Goodness. Take your Allen wrench after you've started it by hand. And thread that in. Bottom that out. And you should have perfectly spaced wheel. Nice thing about the BECK'S Armory wheels is that using the spacers that come with it, everything is perfectly spaced and you don't have to worry about any other adjusting. Next, we're going to attach the 4-inch contact wheel. If you have an old kit, you're going to have more spacers, as the old kit has a longer shoulder bolt. The new kits have a 2 1/4. But the one thing that is consistent with all the kits is that there's only one of these 1/8" spacers in between the plate and the wheel. If you have a longer bolt, you'll put the extra spacers on the outside. With all the spacers on, before you tighten it, the spacers and the bolt should be pretty close to flush. Now there's 2 holes. This farther forward one is for a 2-inch wheel. This back one is for a 4-inch wheel. You're gonna use the back one. You would only use that front one as if you choose to not use the supplied 4-inch contact wheel. Now, the spacer likes to fall off the shoulder bolt when you're tightening it, so you can use a screwdriver to hold it in position. If you hold it from the bottom, you have access to that spacer almost the entire time, right up until the end, which you can take it off and then it won't fall off. If you tighten this and there's too much play side to side, there are additional shims. There are some 10,000 shims, and you can add those to the outside to eliminate the side to side. Now, at the tiniest bit of side to side is okay. That's better than putting side load on the bearings. You do not want to side load the bearings, but you don't want lots of side to side play. So use those really paper thin shims on the outside to eliminate any side to side movement. So the slot goes like this, the open slot, and the reason that's open is so you can just loosen this and pull it off easily. So you're going to take a hex bolt, you're going to take a lock washer, a flat washer, and then you're going to get that through the open slot and thread that into the tapped hole on the D plate. Finger tight to begin. Same process here. Lock washer, flat washer. These are going to take a 7/16 wrench. So once those are finger tight, you're going to take your D plate. Now, these holes are not symmetrical, and you will see it only fits on one way. In this configuration, it hits the wheel up here. That's the incorrect configuration. So the bolt close to the top goes on the top. You will then place it, and then you will put a flat washer, a lock washer, and a hex nut. And then you will do flat washer, lock washer, and a hex nut. All right, so the easiest way to get this lined up with the tangent face of these is to take the tooling arm out, lay it on a flat surface, and then tighten these two bolts. And if you want a little bit of a gap, you could always put a shim under there or a couple pieces of paper and then tighten them, but that's a great starting point as far as the distance for these two screws. The next thing we're going to do is assemble the work rest. To do that, you're going to need one of these adjustable handles, carriage bolt, and a 3/8 washer. So you've already welded this assembly together like so. And at this point, we're going to take this piece, which looks a lot like this, but it's bigger and it has this cutout. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it like that. Then take your carriage bolt, put it through the two of them, install your 3/8 washer and your handle. So we're going to take your carriage bolt and place it through that hole, put your washer on the carriage bolt, and you can use your fingers to turn this on. When it's about halfway, go ahead and pull that out because you're going to sit this on it. Also, pro tip, if you bevel this, it'll make putting this on and off easier. So, place that like so, and then now your work rest is assembled, and it's actually a lot easier to adjust this when it's on the machine. So at that point, this can be placed into the receiver tube of your grinder and locked in position. And once that's locked, you can then adjust this as you choose. Just like that. Now, if you want to run this grinder in the horizontal configuration, we haven't installed that pin yet, but simply rotate, remove this, rotate it 90 degrees, put it back in the receiver tube, and now this handle right here, we're going to loosen that, slide it out, flip it 180 degrees, and we're going to put it back on like so. And now you can loosen your tooling arm, set the angle so it matches the work rest, and you can tighten that back up. And this is how you would grind horizontally. To install the lock, you're going to install 3/8 rubber washer in between this plate and this plate, which I don't actually have a rubber washer in stock right now for the video's sake, so I'm just going to represent it with this washer right here. So you will start it, get it as high as you can, take a screwdriver, get in the middle, push it through, and now when you come back through with the actual bolt, that's going to be the easiest way to get that washer in between those two. Place a 3/8 washer on the outside and install your handle. And this will lock the rotation so the grinder no longer tilts To install the tension arm, we're going to use our 1/2-inch carriage bolt. That's going to go through from this side, and you're going to put one 3-inch spacer, get that started. Your actual arm, feed that through, and make sure you don't push it too far in, otherwise you won't be able to get the last one in. Slide that in, and push your bolt the rest of the way through. You might have to wiggle the arm a little bit to help it line up, and slightly rotate it, and give it a little tap. Now, on the other side, we're going to place a washer, 1/2-inch washer, 1/2-inch lock nut, and a hex nut. Now the question is always, how tight do I make this? Also, I recommend putting grease in between these discs and this arm, so that way it doesn't rust. I'm not going to do that to this one because this is a customer grinder and they have to paint this stuff, and you don't want grease and oils on your grinder when you paint it. So I'm not going to grease this one, but I would put grease in between these discs. And the nice thing is you don't have to hold on to the other side because it's a carriage bolt. So take a wrench and tighten this up until it no longer falls. You should be able to move it. You want it to be snug. And remember, you have a spring here, so, but you should be able to easily move it, you know, with a finger, single finger. And maybe work it back and forth just to make sure it doesn't loosen up, and then adjust it. And this is something you can play with. You can give it a little bit more, a little less, based on, you know, how the grinder is running. So that is how you attach your tension arm. It should be able to hold itself up without falling down. If your nut's not tight enough, it'll fall down. So it shouldn't like be able to fall down, because in that case it can move side to side. If this moves side to side, your grinder is going to perform terribly. So it's important that this is tight enough that it does not fall down on its own, but loose enough that you can still move it by hand. Next, we're going to assemble the multi-axis tracking. So the first part that we're going to install is going to be this portion right here. We're going to do that by taking the 1/2-inch long shoulder bolt and putting it through like so. There are no shims under this or on top of this. Next, you want to fine-tune your tracking device. So it should, with this shoulder bolt fully tightened, be able to move back and forth easily. If it's completely stuck when you move back and forth, take a piece of sandpaper, put it on a flat surface, and then just rub this and take a couple thousandths off until it's just nice and perfect, just like that, without any rocking, tipping. So that's how you want that. Now you're going to take your rod end, put your spring on, plastic washer, feed that through. So you're going to put that like that, push that way a little bit, and then you're going to go with your other with your other shoulder bolt. You're going to put this in like so. A good way to get access to this is by tipping it back like so, and then you can get access to it with your Allen key, Allen wrench. That should move like so. Now take your other plastic washer and your comfort grip knob. At this point, you want this and this to be parallel with each other. So when you push it up against, you'll see this corner is touching and this one is not. So you're going to turn the knob until they both touch. And when you get it dialed in, so the daylight is exactly the same on the top and the bottom, that's a great starting point for your grinder. So now you're going to install a 1/2 inch hex nut onto this stud. And then a lock washer, and a flat washer, 1/2 inch, and this goes right in this threaded hole, like so. And the goal is to make sure that this is not out or in, but parallel. So we're going to thread that in until it's parallel. And then you'll leave this nut loose, but when you're tuning it, after you get this thing where it goes forward and backwards consistently, you're going to tighten this nut, and then you won't use this knob anymore unless you know, for some reason you don't go forward and backwards. Your day-to-day belt-to-belt normal tracking is going to be done with this handle. This is for tuning it when you first set up the grinder. Last but not least, we will install the gas strut. You're going to take your stud here and you're going to place it in the threaded hole right behind the handle. Take your other stud. You can put this on the inside like that. Washer, nylock nut that comes with it, and then tighten those down. It's always important that the rod faces down. It's what that does is it uses gravity to keep the oil on the seal. Also, sharp ceramic powder will not build up and ruin the seal because it won't pile up on the seal, it will fall with gravity. So, clip this on the bottom, rotate it, and press it on the top. And now you can add more tension to your tracking, your tension arm if you want to tighten this bolt. You can tighten it further. The key is make sure that it rises back up on its own. So you can add more tension. And as long as it's pushing back up on its own like that, you're good. So the last component to install is going to be your 3-inch tracking wheel. Now the BECK'S Armory tracking wheel is flat. It does not have a cone face. I greatly prefer flat tracking wheels. Nobody made these, so finally I had to make them myself. You shouldn't have two domed wheels because they fight each other. So your drive wheel should be domed, all the rest should not be domed. So you're going to take your 1.5-inch shoulder bolt, your 3-inch wheel, your spacer, you're going to put that on there. I'm going to thread this in like so. So using the spacers that come with the grinder, all of these wheels will be in line with each other without any tuning. That's the nice part about this wheel kit is I designed it for the BA shredder, so you don't have to do any tuning. Also, if you have a 56C motor frame, your drive wheel and the shaft will be flush with each other because the length of the shaft on the motor is a standard length. So I've already done the math to figure out where the center of that wheel needs to be so it can be flush with the end of the motor shaft. So when you install your drive wheel, push it all the way on until those two faces are flush with each other, and all your wheels will be lined up without any special tuning required by yourself. Anyways, guys, that's how you build a BA shredder. I hope this video was helpful. If you're interested in purchasing a BA shredder and you don't already have one, there'll be a link in the description of this video where you can do that. Thank you for watching and have a great day.